owns Bitcoin. Who's nobody? Stay here, find out. I will tell you. This is the market update. I am your host, Bill Noble. Who are the secret buyers of Bitcoin out there? Are they lurking? Are they waiting? Are they too scared? Yes, of course they are. But what happens when they change their mind? How high can the market go? Got a little sample of it going on this morning. If you want to get some details on today's rally Monday morning, we will talk about the Federal Reserve and how the printing press is being warmed up to save Mr. Banking System. That accounts for the very perky rally. That and the fact that I think we have a lot of non-believers in Zcash, right? Not a lot of people believe that Zcash can go banana zone. Patreon Platinum has a whole write-up with another shocking chart, right? Another analog as to what happened last time Bitcoin, when it was kind of new and hot, went all the way up and then retraced 62% retracement. You won't believe what happened thereafter. So everyone's like, well, Bitcoin is too stodgy. Bitcoin is, everybody owns Bitcoin. Yeah, actually in TradFi, nobody owns Bitcoin. Nobody thinks they have to. They have to, right? Because problems with the currency and government debt are so out of control. And I know that everybody in crypto has heard this, want. Your bags are getting wrecked. What happens if that changes suddenly, say in the middle of December, when everybody from legacy is trying to go home? Very interesting thought process here. People don't think they need to own Bitcoin. They don't think they need to own crypto. And these ETFs are out there. In other words, the talk in legacy is about how much of the total capital that's out there is allocated to crypto. And it's basically nothing. Nothing. I mean, we in crypto sit here and we're always following what BlackRock is buying or whatever. We're always glued in. It's like, oh my God, OG whales are selling. That was miners. First of all, it was miners who were getting out of Bitcoin. So their stocks stayed in a stock index and they didn't get penalized because they implemented some BS rule. So when you hear OG whales are selling, yeah, that was miners making a position adjustment. CoinDesk is reporting this morning that, OG whales or long-term holders or long-term holdings of Bitcoin is actually at the lowest point in some time. Okay? In some time. Darren Moore Jr. Somebody wants me to do a collab with Darren Moore. I'd be happy to. I do a Tuesday collab with Crypto Princess out of the UK. So yeah, tune in for that. What happens if Bitcoin stays above 90K? Well, don't go anywhere. I'm going to remind you, as everybody actually got a second chance to get it below 90. So I think we had peak fear there's 3 trips to 80. First time was peak fear. Second one was peak anxiety. Okay. And this one was peak depression. When this thing printed below 90 and stayed there for a day or two, I think that was peak depression. I think people were over it. They were done. And I think they're still over it and done, which is why this thing can continue to go massively higher. Reminding you that, Patreon got from our GAN model, if Bitcoin is above 90K and stabilizes there, you got a 74% chance of a V bottom and a new high. Now, is that new high going to occur in December? I don't know. But certainly if you consider between now and mid-January, that's a lot of time for this thing to absolutely smoke to the upside. Now, why would it smoke to the upside? Well, other than the fact that everybody in crypto has sold and is bearish, the Fed, according to Bank of America, is going to start doing $45 billion a month in flat-out QE. For those of you who weren't around for post-2008 QE, right, the Fed printed $85 billion a month, right? So that was about, 4 or 5 trillion over the period of, 10 years. And then, of course, they did, 5 trillion in March of 2020. So they're warming up 45 billion a month, according to a legacy analyst, to support the banking system. Because as I said last week, you cannot have a problem in the banks. You cannot have banks going down at Christmas or after Christmas or at all, because printing their way out of that problem, they may not be able to do that. They may not be able to do it if they really just let it go and let stuff blow up. So they got to come in now, and they got to come in bigger than anybody expected. Now, there's a lot of conflicting economic data around there. It's funny what people are attracted to. Like, for example, in equities, stocks that are, have to do with the AI data center build out, materials, bulldozers, they're called cyclicals. They're doing great. But if you look at like metrics of like economic data, things are terrible. Like they haven't been this bad since 2008. It's kind of ironic in a way. We're going to like build everything in an imploding economy. The Fed has to do something about the fact that some of this economic data is so bad, right? They can't ignore, like, for example, what's going on in the labor market. They just can't ignore it anymore. So they're coming in to save the banks, and they're coming in to save themselves, because they're not going to exist as an institution. They don't do something about the data. Now back to crypto. So money is coming. And what's really funny is people in crypto are very attracted to kind of like disaster scenarios. But I think the disasters in crypto are actually bullish. Don't go anywhere. I'll tell you why. Because the excesses have been purged out of the system. Like, do you know Metaplanet, the Japanese MicroStrategy, went from up 700 million on its Bitcoin to down 540 million on its Bitcoin? I mean, absolutely a nearly catastrophic P&L switch, right? And Bitcoin Treasury companies, and this was announced by Galaxy Digital, which made it all the more shocking. Galaxy Digital told everybody that, Bitcoin Treasury stocks are basically done. Bitcoin Treasury companies, it's over. They're going to have to sell to pay off debt. And everyone looked at that on my Twitter, and a couple guys commented, it's like, hey, Bill, is it over? I'm like, well, no. Because, Metaplanet just took its beating the way Michael Saylor took his beating in 2021. It's the painful progression. It's the rite of passage. And all this Bitcoin Treasury stupidity that went on in legacy has been purged, because they were 10xing stocks that bought crypto when crypto was doing nothing. Your bags went to zero. And in equities, they were pumping anybody who bought Ethereum at 4,000. I mean, it was crazy what they were doing, but it's over. It's over, right? They came after Michael Saylor. Good luck. He's still there. Still there, right? He's just sitting there waiting for everybody to tell him that, he's an idiot. But, I mean, he has a moat. He has a large, almost unattainable amount of something that no one in legacy owns. Like, we're always obsessed with, it's so much volume in the Bitcoin ETF. Dude, we're talking about, 60, 70, 80 trillion dollars. And most money managers are talking about a 2 to 3% allocation. So my former colleague, Jordy Visser, is noting, and we've talked about this on the show, right? People in legacy are going to allocate. Schwab, Vanguard, all of these investment houses are going to start allocating money. They are. And, back to Michael Saylor, Eagle King right now, Michael Saylor bought 10,000 Bitcoin at 90K. The guy's not going to stop. He should. he should probably hold off because, hedge funds are going to continue to attack his company, but he doesn't care. And of course, when I saw this, this thought leadership piece about the fact that no one owns Bitcoin, it just reminds me that, this Vanguard news came out last week and everyone blew it off. Everyone blew it off when the Fed started doing, 2019, they did the same thing. We called it non-QE QE, or printing. Printing is printing. And they're going to have to do $45 billion a month, according to one analyst. And that pumps crypto. That's high-powered money. And don't forget, Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is sitting on $1 trillion in the Treasury general account. And they're going to unleash it all. They're going to unleash it all. They're going to do stimulus checks. I think they have to do stimulus checks to save the banks, because I think people are going to start walking away from houses and cars. And this results in, very simply, in a crypto parabolic. Period. Now, there's also things that can goose crypto, like gold and silver can continue to go higher, right? I don't think there's anything stopping silver from going to 100. And I think the other thing that people are going to realize is that ETH, Bitcoin is digital gold. And what's the silver? Is it ETH or is it Zcash or is it all of these altcoins? Latest weekly chart report for Patreon that's in the middle tier discusses which of these big altcoins has weekly chart setups. I mean, I'll just tell you right now, one of them is SUI. I got the idea to look at all the rest of them because, SUI on a weekly chart is destroyed. But there are incredible DeMark signals, which exists in other altcoins. Now, one of those altcoins happens to be XRP. And, if you take the Bitcoin argument and say, who owns Bitcoin? Nobody. Who owns Solana? Well, absolutely nobody. Who owns Ethereum? Tom Lee. Who owns Zcash? Arthur Hayes. You know what I'm saying? Like, these coins have like one big owner. Solana is Kyle Tsunami, if I'm saying that right, from Multicoin Capital, who made his digital asset treasury company. And then you have XRP. Right? XRP in an ETF with a rabid retail base. The retail base in equities becomes a walking advertisement for XRP if the legacy crowd goes looking for alternatives. Because God knows there's XRP engagement farming going on everywhere. Everybody's talking about XRP, except XRP as an asset that equities people can just allocate to passively. In other words, they can say, okay, well, what kind of ETFs we got? Okay, well, we got Bitcoin, we got Ethereum, we got Solana, we got XRP. And then there are other ETFs that people have never heard of in legacy, right? Like HBAR and other ones. But the simple fact of the matter is nobody owns crypto. And everybody in crypto is so depressed and so bearish that the promise of 2025 was never fulfilled. Now, Patreon Platinum has GAN analysis about what should have happened in 2025 and what still can happen in 2025, right? In other words, next year, you're going to have banks go down. You are. I mean, that's why the Fed's coming in with $45 billion right now. Right now, right? They mean business to such a degree, like in terms of TA, just switching back and forth. If you get Bitcoin above 94, because one thing you're obviously noting is the hesitation, right? Bitcoin goes up 2%, and it seems like everyone sells. Or I think it's more like everyone just stops buying. Okay, now what happens when people are not afraid anymore? This includes crypto people and legacy people. I don't think legacy people are going to be afraid. I just think they don't understand Bitcoin, and there's going to have to be an event with a bank, a currency, or government debt before everybody goes, oh, gee, I need to own this. And there's nothing they love better in equities than buying high and selling higher. Like intelligent asset allocation is, get rid of NVIDIA and other stocks and buy Bitcoin down 30, 40%. Now, of course, they won't do that. The herd will want to buy high and sell higher. So you got to watch out. I mean, I know it's at 91, but I don't think it's too early to start talking about what happens if you take out 94, which is, considered the cost of production by JPMorgan. I know electricity costs for miners, that number's a lot lower. But if you start reclaiming 94, which was inserted in the mind of the market, in my opinion, you're looking at 100 in Bitcoin quickly. And guess what? Even if Bitcoin has to sit here for 2 more weeks, I got news for you. These altcoins want to go. They want to go. Right? I mean, what exactly is the case to have ETH back below 3,000? I mean, have you seen all this ETH FUD? You would have thought they would have figured this out when ETH went from 1,300 to 4,800, that they would get over this whole ETH FUD thing. Even the Solana FUD is ridiculous, as the guy from Multicoin Capital was noting on Twitter this morning. It's like, this network is just humming along, doing gazillions of transactions and stable coins, and no one cares. And don't even get me started on the need for privacy, the fact that Monero doesn't go down, transactional Bitcoin Cash was pressing 600 again. No one interested in big altcoins. That's funny. No one in crypto is interested in Bitcoin, big altcoins, but they may be very, very, very interested in legacy once the Fed comes in with all this QE to save the banks and the interbank funding market, because that's on the verge of basically no one wanting to lend to each other. And if you're in crypto and you don't understand that, you don't have to understand it. You don't. When they come in and they start pushing money into the system, okay, they're effectively reversing all this tightening that they've done and going straight to easing. Like, not just cutting the Fed funds rate, because no one cares about that. That doesn't matter, right? They could cut that to 0. Banks won't lend to each other unless they jam a ton of money in the system. Period. So, I mean, this is what crypto people are not taking into account. And of course, they're not taking it into account because they're not getting the price action, right? The price action creates the bearishness, the depression, the hesitation. But that's also what fuels like an absolute monster rally when the time comes. Like, we have not discussed this, which is why you should subscribe to the channel, turn on alerts so you know when we're going live, hit the like button and leave a comment down below. What do you think the market is going to look like, or crypto Twitter is going to look like, if they actually do a reclaim above the 55-week moving average? Matter of fact, as we speak, DeMark moving averages, which again is covered in the Patreon chart report, you have DeMark moving averages that the market is currently breaking above as we speak. You have an unbelievable 13 bottom in both Solana and XRP. And guess what? No one's paying attention to that. I mean, that won't matter until it does, right? This like slump where no one cares about, things like TAO, which also has the 13 bottom signal. It's like, hey, wait a minute. And retail, everybody wants to sell the first rally. And this idea in legacy that they want to sell everything or just stay in stonks and go home for Christmas, I got news for you. Over Thanksgiving, they did, the pump on Wednesday and the dump on Sunday. I think you got to be careful that crypto Christmas is not up only. I don't know how long it's going to take to develop. Certainly, they wanted to develop it last night in Asia time, which is very significant because normally there's a problem in Japan and, oh my God, it's the end of the world for crypto. Of course, that's total bunk. But I mean, that's been the hedge fund algo trade. Interesting that they weren't interested in selling crypto and how well crypto did overnight, considering that. I wonder if that's a warning about the future. So everyone thinks Bitcoin is no good. That's wrong. And they're even more wrong thinking that all these big altcoins can't smoke to the upside, because they can. They can. I mean, if Zcash goes to 1,000 in January of next year, where's XRP going to be? Right? I mean, I think it's a boring call, or it's conservative. I don't want to say boring. It's conservative and reasonable to think that a big rally in XRP would be from $2 to $3. So if I came on and said, good morning, everybody, XRP is going to go from $2 to $3. Okay. Or $2 is the new 55 cents, where you just sit before you go up, and everyone goes, oh, okay. But have you noticed that there's a complete absence of talk about $4 and $5, particularly $5 XRP? No one is talking about that. Not even the engagement farmers are talking about $5 XRP. I mean, 200 Solana, 5,000 ETH. Are these really ridiculous numbers? The market was there 2 months ago. Why are they ridiculous numbers now? Again, the bearish price action has taken crypto people and turned us all into depressed zombies. Meanwhile, there's literally a fleet of dump trucks backing up, beep, 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 backing up to Coinbase to just absolutely load up on everything. Because again, if the Fed is in pushing money into capital markets, I call them the liquidity heads on Twitter. It's like, oh, liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. They don't understand what they're talking about. They just think, oh, liquidity means number go up. No, liquidity means they have to push money into the system because there's a problem with banks. And if there's a problem with banks, there's a problem with the integrity of government debt and the currency, which leads you to Bitcoin. It's not just number go up, right? It's currency changes, like changing your currency close. Or the way I always say it is, you're getting off the legacy elevator, then you're walking across the hall and you're getting onto the Bitcoin elevator. It's that simple, right? People are just going to be like, oh yeah, I need to have 3% of my money in this. And we're all down on Bitcoin. I mean, wouldn't it be funny if Bitcoin sat here while alts outperformed? Now, who is talking about that? Nobody. Bitcoin sat here while alts outperformed. Everybody gives up on Bitcoin and it goes to 150. Right? Some guy says $400 Dash. Dude, there was Dash FUD over the weekend. Why is anybody FUDding transactional Bitcoin? Knox Bill says, trust in Santa. In Santa and a higher power we trust. It's funny that you mentioned that. Quinny the Rect is here. Welcome. Wouldn't it be funny if you did the whole year in 3 weeks? Everything you thought you were going to get all year, they do it all in crypto in 3 weeks. And you're going to tell me that it can't happen. You're going to tell me it can't happen, right? Because you know what? I was being a jerk, and I was telling Toby it can't happen. I was like, there's no way this thing is going to make a new high between now and the end of December. And then I read this other piece about nobody owns Bitcoin. And Toby was like, get bent, dude. It's still going up, even if it has to leak over into January. Now, of course, you want to get all the latest news. And we have the Santa portfolio ready for the YouTube member podcast coming up at 5 p.m. Eastern time, where Toby will be dropping some serious knowledge. And we have a new report that Patreon Platinum has already got their hands on. Okay. And we're making ourselves very clear about what we think is going to happen with the old Santa rally. You know, the Santa rally. Santa rally is something that they refer to in equities. The Santa rally is something from equities where big portfolio managers buy all the stocks that are up. So it looks like they owned all the great stocks for this year, even if they didn't. So it's almost like the winners levitate higher. And of course, retail will sit there and watch the stocks, the top stocks, levitate higher, think they don't have to do anything. And then they're going to walk in on January 1st, and smart money is going to be unloading that and coming over here. Because if you have a great idea like Bitcoin and nobody owns it, according again, this is classic old-fashioned hedge funds, Stan Druckenmiller kind of stuff. If you have a great narrative and no one owns it, then you just buy all you can because it can just go insane to the upside as the herd arrives. Now, you're saying to yourself, Bill, I am the herd, right? And I'm getting just destroyed. Right. But that distracts you from the bigger picture. The bigger picture is if you start having huge players pouring into crypto ETFs or Coinbase in general, like you got to get your Bitcoin off these exchanges, right? I mean, you probably own a Bitcoin receipt as it is. If you don't get the Bitcoin off exchanges when these guys show up, they're just going to cash you out and say, you know, you don't really own Bitcoin. We had to send it over to the big guys. Hal Lopez from Portugal joining in. What's going on? Livid is here. Hello. MJ hits. Bullish or bearish that SEC is looking at Zcash? Dude, I don't think people understand that you got to start looking at Zcash as baby Bitcoin. Forget the privacy angle. No one gets that yet, right? Everyone understands theoretically that it's important, but you got to start looking at Zcash as baby Bitcoin because it is Bitcoin. It just has a privacy feature on it. It's like Bitcoin at like, you know, I don't even think it's not top 20 yet. It's close to top 20. It should be top 5. Like Zcash should be where XRP is. XRP should be where Ethereum is, and Ethereum should be worth $1 trillion. You know, with Solana in the same ballpark. I mean, Solana's market cap right now is a joke. You know, it's like what, $100 and something billion? That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. I mean, you know, there's a big company out there that spent $70 billion on a metaverse that never showed up, never arrived. $70 billion that went nowhere. Okay. Solana is, oh my God, Solana is only worth $77 billion. So instead of betting on the metaverse, these individuals, they could have bought all of the Solana. Do you realize how ridiculous this is? It's like talking about the numbers that they're just indiscriminately throwing around in legacy. Meanwhile, we're sitting here in crypto and like major mechanisms that people are going to use. Like, you know, Jamie Dimon is out talking about stablecoins this morning. You know, Europe continues down this insane draconian path where, like, you know, our vice president is kind of trying to make it an issue and go over there and try to stop them, right, from becoming like some kind of 1984 surveillance state, right? Black Friday sales hitting the desk of the Federal Reserve. If you're just joining us, sales are up 8%. Unfortunately, it was inflation, right? Sales are price times quantity. Quantity was the same or lower, but the prices were higher. So it looks like sales were up. Just the prices were up. Buy now, pay later jumped to $1 in $5 spent, with over half of users already missing payments. You know, folks, this comes home to roost in equities. And that's why the Fed is coming in with $45 billion a month now, so they don't have to do $100 billion a month later. It's that simple. It really is. And I know your bags are down, and I know Bitcoin's only up 1%, and I know this doesn't resonate with you because you feel so wrecked. It was panic, anxiety, and depression. Like 89, like I found 89 depressing. I'm like, this is BS. And Zcash, you know, Zcash hurt people. Zcash went to 400. It looked like it was breaking trend lines. It looked like it was going to the moon, and they dropped it back down to 320. Now on that one, you know, I was like, hey, thank you very much. Seriously. I mean, the only problem with my Zcash position is that it's too big. So I don't own enough ETH. And everyone's like, no, you don't want to own ETH. I'm like, actually, you might. You might. Because ETH can follow precious metals, and I don't see anything stopping that. And oh, by the way, while I'm talking about it, you know, if there's a failure to deliver physical silver in any of these exchanges in London or New York, you can have a very bizarre chain reaction that's going to have the Fed putting $100 billion a month in the system. Right? Like, you know, they say silver's going to 100. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. Monero is the privacy coin with a crack in the code. I don't know. They tried to 51% attack it. It didn't work. You know, somebody says, I feel like Zcash is the VC privacy coin and Monero is the people's privacy coin. And that's probably correct. Although Toby gave me a podcast and essentially the difference between Zcash and Monero. So Zcash is encrypted Bitcoin. So one day, Skynet, if you have Zcash in a Zashi wallet with privacy turned on, Skynet will not be able to see your Zcash. No one will be able to see it. That's it. It's encrypted Bitcoin. Oh my God, when I heard this, I'm like, oh my God, I don't own enough Zcash. Now, what Monero is, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is almost like this giant mixer, right? Like, you know, Monero, you move it and it creates like 15 different transactions so no one can tell it's you in a way. So it's like, you know, it's like an invisibility in terms of they can't see the transactions. But because Zcash is encrypted, like the Zcash guys, they invented Sksync, Zkrollup. You've heard of this? That was invented by the Zcash guys who continue to build to this day. So if someone's going to tell me that, oh, well, Zcash is up 12% and, you know, all the bag holders from the down move are going to get out. Okay, yeah, the bag holders can, you know, they can all get out. But if Zcash starts acting, you know, the way that I just explained to Patreon Platinum, like if Zcash starts acting like that, Zcash could lead the whole market. Zcash could lead altcoins. Like you don't know. Like when you see this picture that I drew, like, you know, I have a 1999 crazy picture. And now I have a 2016 crazy picture. I don't care. I absolutely do not care because Toby doesn't care. It's like, I don't want to hear any of this bearish stuff. All these like Bitcoin maximalist podcasters are like, I'm not selling. The OG whales that are supposedly getting out because it's the 4-year cycle, whatever. That's all Bitcoin miners and a giant coincidence. Meanwhile, giant hedge funds have all sold Bitcoin because they're all doing this really cute hedge fund cocktail party trade of, you know, I'm short MicroStrategy and long Bitcoin and Michael Saylor is going to blow up. And, you know, they're all talking about the wrong thing. As we said at the top of the show, everyone thinks Michael Saylor is going to blow up right up until the point where they realize that the guy's got the most scarce form of money in the world. No one owns it, and no one is ever going to be able to buy as much Bitcoin as he can on the open market. Forget about it. That's over. That's over. Everyone's down on Metaplanet. Okay, great. Right? These Bitcoin Treasury companies have been wiped out. Michael Saylor and Metaplanet could be like winner take all, because the Treasury firms and getting levered up, didn't work. The stocks pumped, but then the stocks turned around and crashed. It's winner take all for Michael Saylor. But yeah, let's dump on MicroStrategy. Let's get negative on Bitcoin. CoinDesk writing an article that Bitcoin goes down after every single crypto conference. Okay. Well, normally it has to go up first before the conference in order for that to happen. But, I am a technical analyst, so I'm not going to begrudge people their superstitions. By the way, we want to welcome everybody who's watching on TikTok, right? Why is DARPA, the creators of the internet, I think that's Uncle Sugar, so vested in ZEC? Well, dude, it's simple. When sovereigns have to move money around, it can't be visible to everybody. It can't be. Like, sovereigns do transactions in Monero now. And Bitcoin is great, and everyone's going to invest in Bitcoin, but encrypted Bitcoin, like that's how you have to start thinking about Zcash. Zcash is encrypted Bitcoin. Somebody, Andrew, is saying $2,000 Zcash. Actually, dude, make it $3,000, right? The traded high in Zcash is like somewhere around 900. But, when Zcash originally came out, the first print was at like 3,000. And then, of course, it totally dumped. But Edward Snowden signed the Zcash white paper. Nobody knew that until like 5 years ago, right? When I saw Snowden chastising Bitcoin developers for not having privacy, and then I saw him admit that he signed the Zcash white paper, that's when I became kind of a Zcash maxi 3 years ago, and then just had to sit around. Like, people made fun of me in the beginning, and then we just had to all sit around and wait for it to happen, right? Can Trump pump XRP or not? Okay, well, Trump is only going to pump what Barron owns. I don't know if Barron has XRP. I think the person who's going to pump XRP is a character like Jamie Dimon. Somebody who's going to come in and realize that banks either have to cut costs and use XRP as a payment platform, like they're ripping QNT off the shelf, or it just becomes another currency, right? It's like, dollar, euro, yen, Swiss franc, sterling, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Zcash, XRP. Boom. It's as simple as that. Fast forms of money. So do you need the orange man to pump anything? No. I think the orange man is owned by special interests because of the legal problems prior to becoming president, which frankly is sad. Sad for him and sad for America. The guy is bought and paid for. Probably shouldn't be saying that on the air, but it's true. It's true. Like him, don't like him. I'm sure he means well for America, but he probably knows, what happens after he leaves the Oval Office if he doesn't take care of his special interests. Now, we all know who the special interests are, and it really doesn't have anything to do with crypto. That said, I did see a fascinating video over the weekend that when the orange man signed the strategic Bitcoin reserve bill, that Uncle Sugar didn't buy Bitcoin, but they are building the infrastructure in order to have like a Fort Knox of Bitcoin, to the point where if Bitcoin ever did go to $1 million a coin, it's because that's where the government valued it as, because they tried to buy all the Bitcoin in existence to help back the dollar or the treasury in theory. In other words, everyone talks about Bitcoin going to $1 million. No one ever talks about how you get there. So everyone's like, yeah, the orange man says strategic Bitcoin reserve and then didn't do anything about it. That's actually not true. They're actually building this monster infrastructure to be able to hold huge amounts of Bitcoin. Now, I don't know if they're going to go buy it or try to take yours, which is why you got to get it off exchanges, right? In other words, if you have it in private custody, they can send you a letter and say, turn it in, at which point you go, no. But if you have it there on an exchange, you know, the exchange can just cash you out and send your Bitcoin to Uncle Sugar. So everyone's like, is Trump going to moon my bag? I don't think you want Trump to own your bag, to moon your bag, because if he did, he'd own your bag. You wouldn't have a bag anymore. Everyone's like, oh. Can you imagine Uncle Sugar coming in and doing something like, you know, buying MicroStrategy? I still think the Japanese government's going to buy Metaplanet. Okay. Edwin sends 100 joules, sir. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate everyone out there on TikTok as well. Welcome to the show. John McAfee says, you have no privacy. No messaging service is private. They know everything about you. It was designed this way. You know, people, there's only like kind of like a dozen real privacy coins, real privacy projects, of which AIntivirus and their privacy coin itself, Matrix, which comes out in January. I think what I call the placeholder token for that privacy coin from McAfee's people, backed by McAfee's Twitter feed, Janice's Twitter feed, which has like 100,000 something followers, traded sub 1 million market cap over the weekend. I mean, what happens if Zcash goes to top 5? What's going to happen to the rest of privacy? What's going to happen to the rest of privacy? I mean, it's going to moon indiscriminately, and it's going to take altcoins with it. Trisha Elliott is here on Twitter. Welcome. Okay. Orange Man not bought and paid for, disagree. Okay. You know what? I hope I'm wrong. I know he's a super patriotic guy. I know he is. It just, whoever's around him scares me. Scares me to the point where I want to own crypto. Now, one of the guys around him that I'm happy he's there is Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. You know, outside of the orange man, he is like, I think he's like 75% of the IQ of the entire administration, to be honest with you. Now, having him on your side, having him sitting on $1 trillion and like the button to unleash it, that's constructive, right? In other words, one man may want to do the right thing for you, but the institutions and the stakeholders and all these big players, they may not want you to be free. I mean, again, look at what's going on in Europe. I mean, people are like watching this happen in Europe, and they're just kind of standing around. And, you know, everyone gives the vice president a really hard time, right? Because, you know, he's memeable and, you know, but the thing that he's been working on from the beginning is trying to sound the alarm and trying to get over to Europe and trying to stop these guys from going full 1984. It's really kind of strange as to why they want to do that, right? It's like, well, you know, we have to change who comes into the country, and then we have to crack down on our own population with like Palantir style, medieval, futuristic, crazy control. Like, you know, Twitter can't exist. What? Like, you know, like seriously, sovereigns are telling you that Twitter can't exist. Meanwhile, in crypto, we're just all packing it in. No, we're not doing that. And a 2% rally in Bitcoin is nothing. Oh, by the way, that goes for ETH and everything else. Whatever Zcash does, XRP, Solana, and Ethereum can also do. And after they get done, then Big Boy can go. You want to have all the details in Patreon, and you want to get the Santa portfolio both in Patreon Platinum And we will be going over it live at 5 p.m. Eastern time today. You must tune in. No depression. You need crypto Prozac. Come get it from us. We will see you tomorrow.